Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Vikas Pota, and through this live stream, I have been fortunate to bring some of my friends and people that I know from all over the world together to have a conversation with them on a subject that is connected to education. Today, I bring to you a very dear friend of mine called Leo Schlesinger from Mexico. Leo is the chief executive of a Mexican university network called Aliat, and someone who I regard very fondly and very dearly. But apart from that, in the industry that he is in, and he is considered a leader. Please welcome Leo to this live stream. Leo, welcome.
Thank you, Vikas. Thank you for having me here, and all of you who are listening. I hope we can have a fruitful conversation today.
So, Leo, you are from the university sector, and you run this network of universities. But can you tell us a little bit about Aliat in Mexico, in Latin America, and what happens very succinctly so that people understand the context?
Sure. Look, we are one of the largest private higher education institutions in Mexico. We have over 53,000 students. And we grew by acquisition, which is quite different from what happened in many of the other countries where this is limited. We bought 16 universities in Mexico. We have almost 37 locations throughout the country. And we provide from high school all the way up to graduate degrees and postgraduate degrees as well.
And so, tell me, are you just in Mexico, Leo?
Yeah, we are just in Mexico in terms of our face-to-face classes and campuses. Mexico is a huge country, and there is so much to do here. But also we have our online courses, and we have people mainly from Spanish-speaking countries from different locations other than Mexico as well.
And so, if I remember correctly, in an earlier discussion that you and I had, Aliat has a specific focus on those that we would say are the first generation of university goers from their family. Tell us about that particular demographic and base that you work within, and why is it that you chose that?
Well, I'll start from the end of the question, and why we started with that population is because those are the ones that need it the most. These tend to be the people that normally are left behind by the system. In Mexico, 70% of the education is public and 30% is private. And the 70% that is covered by the public sector is quite limited in terms of the scope to which we can grow because of limits in terms of budgets. And access in Mexico is also quite limited in general. There, depending on the geography, you could have access of 50% to less than 15%. And the one that go tend to be the upper middle class segment, and the people that really need it the most are left behind. So we decided that we needed to do something about that segment, and we needed to provide them with an alternative that it was affordable, that it was accessible, that it was flexible, and that will provide them with the alternatives and the opportunities to access higher education to a level that they didn't experience before.
So I'm interested from a global pandemic perspective as to what the impact has been on especially higher education and universities. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've seen over the last few months?
Yes. I mean, you can see it from many perspectives, from the way that you deliver higher education and from the segments as well that access it. I would say that as it tends to happen from the perspective of the students, the students that come from the upper middle classes will continue to go, and I wouldn't say they are not affected. They are affected, but they're much less affected than the people from our segments that they tend to struggle economically. So, in terms of the way that you deliver the services and deliver education, and you've seen it all over the world, it really changed. First, you're limited to the way that you can deliver face-to-face classes, so you have to go online. But even when you talk about online, we have to make many distinctions. I mean, this is not what I would consider what we're having today, a 21st century online system or class. It's just bringing, the same methodology of a face-to-face interview digitally. And this is what is happening in most of the solutions that are being brought about by the higher education sector in K-12 that had to go into Zoom and Teams and all of the different delivery mechanisms, but they're not really using the full capabilities of the online platforms. So and I'm saying this because what most people tend to think that it is online right now, it is not what we see as real online learning going forward with the learning platforms. So in Mexico in particular, we had all of these technologies of distributing content like what we have today, but the government went a step further, and I would say actually it's a step backward. And they implemented a system that it will be rolled out in the couple of in the month coming, where they will use TV mass distribution, mass TV technology to distribute on classes. So it won't be interactive, it will be just a one-way kind of distribution of classes. So it varies from the technology that the universities and the higher institutions had prior to the pandemic, the way that they are adapting. I think there are many opportunities where we could use these technologies really to advance learning. But because it caught up many of these institutions not being really prepared for it, much of the sector in Mexico is struggling to adapt.
So, Leo, in terms of, I heard you say is to do with technology is part of the solution, but what we are seeing, and the question that I have as a follow-up for you in terms of, if technology was to be so integrated into the way that degree programs are delivered, what happens to the revenue model for universities? So there's a conversation that is happening today regarding, well, in the UK, for example, universities charge £9,500 for face-to-face, and they're still charging, although it's a hybrid model, if not a fully online model, that £9,500. Is that fair? And so what happens to the sustainability of university systems in that kind of scenario?
Look, it's a great question, and I think it comes to the core of what a university is, because and I think we have confused in many cases the role of the university as just providing degrees and developing skills for a profession, which is necessary, which is important, but which is just part of the equation. I think when we think about what a real university is, and it comes to the concept of the universality of the university, it goes first to what we develop in our students. Are we just developing professionals, or are we developing the full potential of a person? And I think that is quite important, because there are things that you can modularize and segment and say, I can develop these skills particular to this profession, online, and that's it. But then what is the full value of the university? And it has to do with what we know, what we learn, how we learn to do, which in some cases it requires much more than just this. It requires deliberate practice and in interaction with a teacher and getting to know yourself. It also develops a sense of belonging, either to a network or even better to a community. And it's also a signal of competence and of brand. So when you bundle all of these things together, some of these things you can unbundle in terms of the value that they provide, and some things that you have to see them as a whole. Whether £9,500 are cheap or are expensive, it depends on the value that you're really providing. And whether you can unbundle those and say, these things I can provide much cheaper online, and the whole, but the whole value that I provide in terms of the development of the person for the next steps on their career, that's another type of conversation. Of course, we have them ourselves too. I will say that our conversation in Mexico and in our universities, it has a lot to do with what you're saying, but it's a little bit different because we're really competitive in our pricing. We aim to be as cheap as possible, but with the best quality possible as well. So we take off all of the things that do not provide high value to the student or the education, and we just focus on the core. So I know that I'm not answering the question of whether they should charge $9,500 face-to-face and it should be half online. It depends, because on top of that, you have to see that any of the costs that the universities are incurring anyway, they remain whether you're providing them online or you're providing them face-to-face. So yes, there are some things that you can make cheaper, but within the time frame of this period of the pandemic, you're not able to lower costs. If you have to lower the price, that means that you're gonna go bankrupt. So it's this equation that it has to be balanced. Of course, if you're really charging a ton of money for little value, then your business model and your model as a university is at risk.
So, I mean, I thank you for that, Leo. But tell me, during the pandemic, as a result of the pandemic, I hear you that to alter your business model is quite difficult. But do you think that over a period of time, the cost of a university education will decrease generally overall? Or do you think it is there to stay where it is? Because I'm worried about, obviously, I've always been worried about debt levels for young people. But I'm also thinking about, well, will the university sector be able to provide value for money from what they're meant to be? So it's interesting you say that you're very reactive and competitive in Mexico, but what do you think the general trend line is for universities?
I will say that there is not one size fits all to your question, and it's quite unequal in terms of the answer. And what I mean is, you will have different models. You will have the Harvard model, the Cambridge model, the Oxford model, which is very high touch, and because of the bundle of value they will continue to be quite expensive. And many people will go there because they want to have a space and they can afford to have that space to grow and to learn things other than are just you can only measure the economic value right now or 6 months from the time that you leave university. And that will continue to be a very expensive proposition, but it will also provide a lot of value, and I think you will see that remaining. Then you have the dynamics that you just mentioned. I think really applies for the segment below that level of universities that are not as high touch, in that you cannot really justify the price in terms of the value they provide, and they will struggle to keep those prices. And I think that's fair and that's okay. And then you'll have the universities like ours that we believe that we have to provide maximum value for as little price as possible, and you have to be as efficient and effective, and on top of that, provide these elements of the education that goes beyond only giving you tools for a given profession. Our view, Vicas, is quite contrary in the sense that we don't believe that we are developing professionals. We believe that we are developing people, persons as a whole, and every one of us will have a dream that we want to pursue, and we need skills and tools to pursue that dream. And what we provide as a university is that toolkit to pursue a dream. And that dream will evolve in time, and we have to provide you with those tools as those dreams evolve. And so we don't believe that education is something that happens from 18 to 24. It's something that happens, for the rest of your life. And we want to be there for you as you need those tools, as you need those skills, and as those dreams evolve. So we don't focus only in the profession. We want to give you the best tools that profession gives you, but the focus is not to develop the best professional, but the best person with the best tools to follow a dream. I don't know if I'm explaining myself.
No, I understand that. But this categorization that you talked about, which is high-touch universities, and you specifically mentioned what I would call elite universities, the ones with the big brands, who have these massive and what they do is, Leo, sorry if I broke off, is this high brand kind of universities justifying their fees. But there are a lot of also other universities that do not have the brand. Their business model is to do with is making sure that small class sizes, personalized delivery in person, and lots more exploration. If I see the Harvards and people like that struggle at the moment, what do you think overall is going to happen to universities that haven't developed the brand, especially in the middle segment? I'd be curious to know your views. Will they just go bankrupt?
I will say they will adapt or they will go bankrupt. I agree with the statement, and I mean, you cannot continue and I have to say that this absolute massive distortion in pricing for the middle segment university, it's not worldwide. I mean, you see it in the States, for example, which it's absurd how much you charge for a degree from a second tier university. It's absurd, and you cannot justify that price. And that's where you bundle services that have very little to do with education when you pay more to the soccer team or the American football coach than the dean of the university. That to me, you cannot justify. And they will have to adapt their business model and the delivery model and the value, or they won't be able to charge as much as they do today. That's for sure. And many of those, if they continue this path, they will go bankrupt. That I agree with that.
So in the K-12 sector, Leo, there's been this conversation regarding, obviously there's been widespread disruption, and there's a lot of discussion right now going on about school reopenings. But in the medium term, we look backwards and say, is there a silver lining to this? And there's a lot of, again, discussion around that. I want to ask you, in terms of, do you think there's a silver lining from the current set of circumstances that we face for the university sector?
I have a view on the K-12 and I have a view on the university. On the silver lining that you mean, if I were to find it, I don't know if I would call it a silver lining, but this will accelerate changes that we were seeing those trends happening in 6-10 years time. Now we're seeing them today, and whether in this adapt or you're out, I think it's going to happen much sooner than we were forecasting. I wouldn't call that a silver lining, but many of these things they will provide value to our students, and but the transition is going to be painful for many. In my initial comment about going into digital, the way that we're going to digital today, the experience of many students today is not the one that they should have. This is not the real value for much of the population today. Going into a Zoom class, particularly on the K-12 space, where you have children having to look at a screen without any supervision, or having to have the parents that they're at work, having to be concerned about, kids' education on screen. That's not the real value that I'm talking about. So my concern is that this experience may set us back instead of setting us forward, even though I think we can all agree that this is the way that things will evolve. But the experience today is not the best. And there are very few institutions that today are prepared to really provide a great digital experience that, to me, should be a hybrid experience. Especially in the K-12 sector, I will never go and I will never suggest that the way to go is a full online service. And I wouldn't say that for much of the university sector, full online is also not the way to go. There are very few people that are prepared at 18, 19, 20-year-olds to go 100% online. And it can be quite alienating as well. I think the university experience required for you to build relationships, and maybe I'm going to sound old-fashioned, but that requires face-to-face. A face-to-face interaction with a great teacher that is inspiring, that touch you in a way that they will inspire you. I think it still requires some level of face-to-face interaction. So things will evolve. I'm not sure what the silver lining is in the things that I'm telling you. I think the silver lining is we're faced with a change that is unavoidable, in that now we need to face it, or we will be, or we will face it anyway and be extinguished.
So, I mean, it's interesting you speak from the perspective of an operator. If you take the perspective of a student, an undergraduate, do you think that the pandemic presents them with an opportunity of any kind?
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to hear your view on that.
Look, I mean, I'm trying to put it in a way that it also has the positive side on it. But given that we are already here, I think having access to 24/7 to the content that you need in a modular way, in a flexible way, for institutions that really have the online capabilities. And I think by online capabilities, I'm not talking again about having a broadcast education. There are platforms that learns the way that you learn, and they can provide you with algorithms that it will provide you with real-time feedback, things that teachers cannot do as effective as these platforms can do, and can complement the teacher and supplement the teacher and augment the teacher. I think those are fantastic things. The thing is, not every student today is experiencing during the pandemic those type of technologies. So my concern is that because you haven't, you will be left out with the impression that this broadcast education is all there is for online, which is not.
So, I mean, I know, and you've beaten me to it, in that I want to end this interview because I know that you have a huge interest in technology, personally in particular. And so, what I would love to hear from you is that come a year down the line, not today, when we get through this very tough set of circumstances that we have, what are the technological innovations that are most relevant for universities? I would love to hear, maybe 1, 2, or 3 examples from you of what is coming down the line in terms of how universities will see technology and the use of technology.
Yeah, there are many marvelous things coming in terms of technology. And I want to start by saying that, in my view, none of them replace great teaching.
High five.
They augment great teachers. Okay, I want to start with that. In the day that an algorithm will replace a teacher, it's a very sad day, and I don't think that's going to happen. It will augment the teaching and help. But the things that I see in terms of platforms and technologies being used by universities and the great technologies coming is, I'm a believer and we're just in the beginning of personalized learning. And by personalized learning, I mean that the way that you interact with a platform online and in these systems will learn the way that you learn, and will know that for a given particular learning objective, you have achieved X, Y, Z level in real time, not after 2, 3, 4 weeks in an exam that is a proxy, but in every interaction that you have with the platform. So we will be able to know, and the system will be able to know whether you are learning or not at the rate and at the level and quality that is required for the objective that you have. I think most technologies are coming down the pipe, and will be great technology. Other things is all of these algorithms that will help you rate, for example, exams, etc. Very tedious work for many of the teachers, and will free up time for the teacher to actually coach. Those things, I think, are also great technology. The other thing is all of the technologies that allow students to interact and learn with each other, okay, and form group learning. And those technologies also that are very social in nature will also allow teachers to interact better with the students, and the communities of students to interact better with each other. Those are some of the examples of things that are coming down, but that require a lot of investments on the universities and the institutions to be able to be implemented.
Thanks, Leo. And we have a comment from a lady called Kirsten Thompson, who I know is at Leeds University in the UK. And she says that I hope a silver lining will result in students and staff having more flexibility regarding how education is delivered and engaged with, and flexible regarding time. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that will be fantastic if that's implemented in the right way. And I talk about this from the perspective of a country that is not as developed in many ways as the UK is. And that's why when you ask me about the silver lining on these things is the way that I mean countries implement in Mexico is facing and implementing many of these technologies, etc. Is not optimal in my view. And the experience that you may have it from the UK is quite different from the experience that you have in Mexico, where not only the platforms are not there, but the access, the internet access and the connectivity and the interactive phones and smartphones and tablets, etc. They are not as widespread with our students as you have them in the UK. So for us, I think the pandemic has really left out many of our population from access to real education. So the impact here is much bigger than the impact where you sit. So that's why my silver lining wasn't as optimistic as it may be in the UK. But I think from the lucky ones that to have access and to have the technologies, which we are one of them as an institution, I think the flexibility, the modularity, the interactivity, the free up of the time for some of the students that are old enough to be able to face these things alone, I think it's quite a positive.
Well, Leo, thank you so much for your time today. I found it specifically interesting because, I focus a lot on the K-12 sector and I don't get the opportunity to really speak with leaders in the universities and higher education space. And you are clearly a very prolific and important voice in that discussion, which I thank you for. I also want to give, pass on the gratitude of our team and for myself for your partnership with T4 and the World Education Week that is coming up between the 5th and 9th of October, where we're going to have a showcase of 100 schools who will, by their example, be able to demonstrate what good looks like for it to be replicated. So thank you once again, Leo, for your partnership in that. And I look forward to staying in touch. Thank you all. And I hope you're another stream Monday evening. And I look forward to seeing you all then. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Vicas.